From the studios in San Diego, California, this is Frank Fired Up here on the Mixed Up Sports Network, coming to you live here on this Thursday. It is the 29th day of June 2017, and a pretty big show for you today. We have the Knicks as they look to find their new president of basketball operations. A couple names in the mix that Knick fans will not be happy about. We'll get to those. We'll get to the Celtics declining. The Pacers' request for the Paul George trade. We'll do a little bit more Chris Paul. You have the Yankees, who made me a liar in about 4 hours' time, and the Mets could possibly be getting Bartolo Colon back. But the reason why we are doing the Boston story today, which we'll start with, is because we do have somebody here from Boston, someone who used to be on the network quite a bit. Krusha is back with us today. Krusha, how you doing today, bud?
I'm doing real good. It's good to be back.
It's been what, 4 or 5 months since you've been on?
At least, yeah. And like I said, it's been a while, but I'm glad to be back. I'm great. I'm ready to do the show and hopefully be on more regularly with you as well, Frankie.
I certainly hope so too. We'll begin today with you goofs out in Boston, as Mark Murray, who writes for the Boston Herald. If you follow his Twitter page, apparently the Celtics waiting to hear back from Indy, but apparently Indy's demands to give Paul George to the Celtics, a little unrealistic. And those unrealistic demands were the Nets and Lakers first round picks for next season and a starting player. The only reason I can think of is you're waiting on what's going to happen with Gordon Hayward before you make a move for Chris Paul.
I was about to say, I'm glad to be back. I thought we were going to have so much insight, but you beat me to the punch. For Celtics fan, I think for the whole Celtics organization, it really depends on, like you said, the whole Gordon Hayward situation in free agency. If the Boston Celtics can land Gordon Hayward, which there's a possibility, but he's already met with 3 different teams over this past weekend or this upcoming weekend. He plans to meet with the Celtics, the Heat, and the Jazz. Which I'm glad that the Celtics are frontrunners. I feel like he can definitely elevate the team to, them already being a top team in the East. I feel like, they're underlooked because of how weak the East is and how dominant LeBron and the Cavaliers have been. But if you can add a new weapon that in Gordon Hayward that can ultimately bring new talent in, I feel like that's where the Celtics are waiting on him. And if they land him, I don't feel like they would have a problem with giving up a starter for Paul George. The only other issue I feel like the Celtics organization is having is the fact that if they get Paul George is not guaranteed to re-sign with them after the next offseason. So for them to want to give up 2 hypothetical stars for one player who may or may not even return is kind of why I feel like they're on the fence. However, with Paul George being the established player he is, I don't understand why we're holding out. We did the same thing with Jimmy Butler. For Danny Ainge as to make these decisions for the Celtics organization, you tend to go back and forth because you remember he made the amazing trade that with Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett that ultimately gave them the first round pick.
Fleeced the Nets for years to come.
Right, but at the same time too, Celtics fans are waiting for that one superstar to make them full-on contenders for possibly a finals appearance.
And if you're looking at players to give up, I mean, I would not consider giving up Marcus Smart. I don't think Jaylen Brown is on the possibility to move. I would not give up Isaiah Thomas for a 1-year loan because Paul George seems hell-bent on going to the Lakers. Would you consider giving up an Olynyk, a Bradley, a Crowder, maybe Jerebko in a deal that gives you Paul George for 1 season?
I would be okay with giving up Olynyk, Smart, and Jerebko. The only, Bradley Avery Bradley would not be someone I would want to give up because of his defensive standpoint for the team. As much as I hate to say it, on a defensive standpoint, he's one of our better defenders because Isaiah Thomas, I love the guy to death. He's a scoring machine. Heart over height.
Yeah, just can't play defense.
He can't play good defense. Avery Bradley's that defensive cornerstone who made a great impact on the Celtics this year. Has improved on his outside shooting, has been an overall better playmaker to his already great defensive skills. So to give him up would be a travesty. Jay Crowder, I feel like it would be a weapon we could give up. Like you said, I don't think Jaylen Brown's going to be on the move. I personally love Jaylen Brown. People say that he didn't do much. That's because the Celtics gave him barely any minutes in the regular season up until the late second half of the season into the playoffs. That's when he started to really shine because we gave him more minutes.
Yeah, that wasn't he your first round pick this season or this past season?
Our third overall pick. Yep.
Yeah. So of course, you're not gonna. The guy's 20 years old. He's not going to be that all-star starter at 20 years old. There's just no way about it. Would you consider giving up Avery Bradley if you knew Paul George was going to sign long-term?
If they somehow came up with a deal where, like with Chris Paul and the Clippers did, where he opted in and signed a contract and then got traded, I would absolutely give up Avery Bradley. Obviously, they're going to ask for much more than Avery Bradley. They're obviously going to probably ask for a couple picks still with the same deal. But I don't expect Danny Ainge to be willing to give up Avery Bradley that easy. I feel like there would have to be like a package deal where it's like Paul George and some role player for Avery Bradley in the picks. But if Paul George opted in and signed a contract for 3 to 4 years, I feel like we would absolutely be able to make that move. But that's the point, is no one's with Paul George and his wanting to sign for the Lakers and just NBA's players in this day and age flip-flopping. I mean, last season we saw DeAndre Jordan was going to sign with the Mavericks, ended up signing back for the Clippers. So players tend to flip-flop on what they want. So even if we
now they want to kick him out.
Exactly. The 1-year loan thing is not a guarantee for him to resign. But if he opted in, signed the contract, and got traded, I would absolutely pull the trigger. But then again, I'm not Danny Ainge.
That was a couple years ago, actually, when he was going to go to the Mavericks. They barricaded him in his house until he said, I'm going to the Clippers. And now they want to get rid of him as if that meant absolutely nothing. The Celtics this year, obviously, they are the closest team to the Cavaliers as far as playing ability. You won. This is the part. This is going to start the first argument, but you guys won the number 1 seed in the East by default because LeBron didn't feel like playing X amount of games this year. Are the Celtics really just that one piece away, or are they a couple? I think they are a couple pieces. I think Gordon Hayward will definitely help. I think they need, if Jaylen Brown comes through and becomes the Jaylen Brown that they expect, I think they'll be fine. I think they need another big man. And I think getting rid of those picks for the Lakers and the Nets, that takes away a possibility next year to get that big man that they need.
Well, to be completely honest with you, I am not even sure the Celtics know how to draft. I mean, granted, I love the Jaylen Brown pick last year. I was one of the few Celtics fans that actually did, but I was confused by the Jason Tatum pick this year when I thought Josh Jackson was the better choice overall. But that's a different day to talk about it.
Oh.
But as far as the Celtics, but back to your original question, do I feel like they're a piece away? No, I probably agree with you. I feel like it's a couple pieces away. I don't think we're going to contend against the Cavaliers this year. I say maybe give it a year or two, just based on what we got going on. Because, like you said, I would love to see Jaylen Brown come into the player that we expect him to be. He's an athletic player. He can get better. He's going to get more minutes. But like you said, we need that big man. And clearly the Celtics have a thing for drafting guards. Confuses me beyond recognition. I don't know what else to really say about them drafting in that regards, but overall, them as a team, they're a couple players away. Maybe something happens to the Cavaliers. Like, I don't wish anything bad for anybody, but if someone was a fall off, then maybe we'd have a chance. But as far as if teams are equal, Cavaliers would win any 7-game series against the Celtics. We can compete with any other team in the East. It's just the Cavaliers are just so dominant in the East that you're basically competing for the second best team in the East every year.
Now to the Chris Paul trade that actually already happened. Again, as you said before, it was an opt-in, and we discussed it yesterday on the show. It was an opt-in. Is if I am a Clippers fan, and I said this yesterday, if I am a Clippers fan, I put all of my faith in Jerry West. He has done so much for the Lakers. He put, as a player and an executive, he put Golden State. He made Golden State into the powerhouse that it is. Now he's taken over the Clippers, and his first move was to get rid of Chris Paul. Here's my thought with it. And again, I said it yesterday. If I'm a Clippers fan, do I want to keep Chris Paul and get knocked out in the first round again? Or do I want to get rid of Chris Paul one bad year, and then you have $70 million in cap room when Carmelo Anthony's a free agent, when LeBron James is a free agent, when Paul George is an unrestricted free agent, when a lot of these big name players are unrestricted free agents?
For the Clippers organization, I feel like with Chris Paul being the established point guard he is, I mean, we can say they get knocked down in the first round every year because they do. But him as an established point guard in this league, he's one of the elite. He's an underrated defender beyond Miles. He can shoot the ball. He can pass. He's an all-around point guard that you really want. However, like you mentioned, I feel like you might want to save up for that free agent. But with Chris Paul leaving too, you also, I think it was just announced either yesterday or today, but Blake Griffin opted out of his contract, and like you mentioned
there's
earlier,
rumors he's going to Oklahoma City now.
Yeah, and like you mentioned earlier, they're trying to get rid of DeAndre Jordan, and ultimately, I think it's going to be a whole different culture change because I was reading reports earlier that JJ Redick is going to be leaving the team as well. So, and he's an established corner specialist for the league and for the Clippers.
4 of your starting 5.
Exactly. So it's definitely going to be a culture change for the Clippers, but as an organization, you have to look at the big picture here. LA is a destination that everybody wants to go. Who's to say that next year that these big names? I mean, there's speculations that LeBron James wants to go to LA, whether it's the Lakers or the Clippers. Who knows? But that's just speculation. But like you said with the Paul George thing, there's not necessarily saying that he's going to go to the Lakers. Everyone can change their mind. It's all speculation at this point. For Clippers fans, you may have to suffer that 1 year, maybe 2 years, but you got to look forward and be like, Jerry West, like you said, trust in Jerry West.
To me, I get the whole changing of the guard. You've lost how many years with these players in the first round? Before Chris Paul, the Clippers had 4 50-win seasons in their history. With this, in the 6 years that they've had Chris Paul, they've had 5. So I understand not wanting to immediately go right back down the tube again. But in this case, you have to clear up the cap space. Paul, Redick, Griffin, and Jordan, they ain't working. There's something about the 4 of them that come playoff time, they cannot get in. Now, a couple years from now, we'll see, has Chris Paul made it to a second round? Has Blake Griffin made it to a second round? Jordan, and so on. And we can find out who in that 3, because I don't consider JJ Redick to be a part of a big 3. Which one of those big 3 was the actual issue? But it's right now, you have to break this up.
And I agree with you 110%. You have to really break them up. And for Clipper fans, I feel like the the off-court issues between the three of them, as far as chemistry-wise, wasn't the greatest. You heard things between Blake Griffin and Chris Paul. You even had Doc Rivers come out and said that I didn't have a bad relationship with Chris Paul. I wasn't the reason why he left, because there's speculations that there was.
The speculations that came out today were there's favoritism Austin over Chris Paul because of Doc.
I don't know how anyone could put Austin Rivers above Chris Paul, but that's beyond me, even if he's your son or not.
Yeah, that's,
the only other person I could think that would do that would be LeVar.
Who I loathe that man. I absolutely loathe that man. You guys can go. You guys look through the video file. The day he went on that thing with Christine Leahy on the Herd. Oh, I lost it that day. Absolutely lost it. And
he's a character, but the best way to describe him, I feel, is he's a great businessman.
I can't even say that. You're selling unproven shoes for $15. You're essentially selling flip-flops for $250. That's an embarrassment.
But you have those people out there who are still buying them.
Yeah, because isn't it nice to have money and be stupid at the same time? Really quick before we go to the Knicks, Mets and Yankees both in action right now. Actually, the Yankees are in a rain delay right now. Mets currently leading going into the bottom of the fifth inning. Mets leading 5-1 over the Marlins. A Jay Bruce single in the first. A TJ Rivera double in the first made it 2-0. A Jay Bruce double in the third made it 3-0. Rivera single made it 4-0. Jose Reyes, a sacrifice fly, makes it 5-0. And then Giancarlo Stanton, go figure, hits a home run, his 21st of the year, 5-1. Yankee lineup tonight, it's Luis Cessa versus James Shields on the mound. For the Yankees tonight, it'll be Gardner, Judge, Gregorius, Sanchez, Ellsbury back in the lineup coming off of injury. Dustin Fowler, Austin Romine, Tyler Wade, Ronald Torreyes ahead of Luis Cessa. For the White Sox, it'll be Alan Hansen, Melky Cabrera, Jose Abreu, Todd Frazier, Yolmer Sanchez, Kevon Smith, Adam Engel, Omar Narvaez, and Willie Garcia ahead of James Shields if and when the fourth game of that four-game series gets underway. So right now, to the Knicks. I woke up yesterday morning and said, and looked through social media as I do every morning. I saw that on my news feed on Facebook, and then I saw it again, and I saw it again. And I sat right up screaming, there is a God. There is a God out there somewhere. But as you look through the possible candidates for this job, you have the guy for Toronto, who I think is the most qualified for this. You realize that God giveth and God taketh away. Because Dolan is seriously considering Isaiah Thomas, who ruined this team to start with. And now John Calipari has thrown his name into the list, who is a one-and-done recruiting specialist. I have been a loser my entire life. I've picked one winning team, and that's the Giants. Can I please have one team that is a perennial loser do good?
I think for the Knicks as a whole, and I know this is probably going to spark some kind of argument in a second, but I think the Knicks organization as a whole has a lot of things to figure out.
That's not an argument. I've been saying that all season.
Right. I mean, it's kind of hard because I feel like already whoever you guys hire is already in a bad spot and has to fix the issues that were already brought on there from previous presidents. With that being said, though, any turnaround, whether it's a small one or a big leap forward, you guys, can take that as a positive. But with the whole Phil Jackson thing and just, alienating players, when your top guys can't stand you, doesn't want to show up to an exit meeting, and Kristaps Porzingis, there's something extremely wrong. Dozing off during
Fell asleep during a practice. How much more do you need to know that this guy's heart is not in it?
right. Um, but as a whole, the Knicks organization, they definitely need to look forward, need to start building their team to where it needs to be. As far as if Melo's on that team, there's been talk if they want to,
He
they refuse to
can't
buy
be.
out his contract. He says, nope, you need to buy. Like he's been demanding a buyout. It's
No,
for that.
his demand is either buy me out or I'm playing for the Knicks next season. That's all there is to it. I'm opting in, buy me out, or I'm on your team. I wouldn't mind it, to be perfectly honest. He's not worth the 24 mil or whatever he's getting next season, but if Phil Jackson's out of there and Hornacek can actually put the offense in that he wants to put in, maybe Carmelo Anthony might get the stick out of his butt.
This may hurt a lot of Knicks fans, but honestly, I feel like the minute Melo leaves, you guys can actually start being a more rounded team. I
Oh,
feel
we
like
know that.
you guys definitely need to build around Porzingis.
That's not a secret.
Their draft this year was I didn't agree with it. I feel like there was 3 or 4 players that were drafted after their pick that they could have easily taken and would have been 10 times better than the pick they did. But
That's what they said.
something about you guys
They said
informed is
Malik Monk was very surprised that he did not get drafted by the Knicks.
it's something about foreign dudes for the Knicks. I don't know what that.
They figured they got one unicorn, we may as well get another one. And really, and honestly, you draft this kid at point guard who's supposed to be fantastic. You have Jeff Teague saying he's interested in the Knicks, which what hit him in the head to say that he's interested in the Knicks? And they're still considering bringing back Derrick Rose next season? Why?
For me, the best out of those options would probably be Jeff Teague. Derrick Rose was too injury ridden. Yes, he had a great MVP season. He was phenomenal on the Bulls, but the minute that injury hit, he has not been the same Derrick Rose.
No, he's
We've
gotten
seen
hurt every year.
We've seen little bits and pieces during games, but as far as a all-around great player, it's not the same Derrick Rose. And you're going to put your trust into a guy who's been playing overseas. Like you said, you found one unicorn, great, but I might have my doubts.
And let's not forget about the time that Derrick Rose this season buggered off just and left before a game in Chicago, didn't tell anyone where he was going, just up and left. Which
The same
honestly,
Derrick Rose that claimed that the Knicks were a super team.
anyone who thought the Knicks was a super team is a fool. Okay, I thought it was absolutely hilarious. Did you see before the season they did an NBA 2K17 sim? The Knicks, this year's Knicks versus this year's Warriors with Kevin Durant on the team, and the Knicks won by like 10. I'm sitting there
I
going,
didn't do that.
I'm sitting there going, you have to have only played that once. That could not have been like 1 out of 100. That was 1 out of 1. It's the Knicks this past season. Again, as I said yesterday, if you look at Phil Jackson's reign here as the president, he was supposed to draw big name free agents. He didn't. He was supposed to build a team that was capable of winning championships. Instead, he built the worst team in franchise history. He barely showed up for any games at home or on the road. Again, falling asleep in practice. Routinely taking the clipboard away from Hornacek to try to teach the guys who did not want to learn the triangle offense. Again, you get the headache of Phil Jackson out. Good. Do not insert another headache like Isaiah Thomas. And I know those two are close, Dolan and Thomas. I know those two are close. Calipari can recruit one and dones. That's it. When was the last time Kentucky won a championship?
I can't tell you. I don't remember.
Exactly. So he can recruit 1-year college players, and that's it. He has, how much NBA experience does he have? I think he's got next to none, but his name has been thrown around with the Knicks organization so much lately that it almost seems likely that he is going to become the new president of the Knicks. And again, it would just be an absolute disaster.
It would be, and as far as Kentucky's concerned, having the one and done is a common thing, but you don't need players coming in just to automatically have it. You shouldn't be going through a rebuilding stage every single year. I mean, not every team is the 76ers at that
It's the
point.
status of the league, though. Now that's status quo for the league. Well, for
R-
for college basketball, you get a bunch of one and duns, and now you're shoving 19 and 20-year-olds who aren't ready to play in the NBA to these teams with
Right.
lofty expectations.
Now, and I think at this point, the league has definitely evolved, and and from transferring from college collegiate level to playing against people who will never smell or anything close to the NBA, and then putting them into these essentially the best in the world. People dream of playing for the NBA. You have people coming from overseas. Like we mentioned, Kristaps Porzingis. You have these people that that play at the top level. You can't expect a 19 and 20-year-old to take their team and immediately jump light years ahead of where their team was last year.
Yeah,
Like
no,
people saying that Lonzo Ball for the Lakers will lead them to the promised lands. I'm sorry, but the Lakers have a
no, no,
lot of
no,
things that
that's
need to work.
LeVar Ball saying that.
I've actually heard some people like Chris Borsard has
Broussard,
saying
he's
that
he's a fool.
Lonzo Ball was the truth and he'll do wonders for the team. It's personally, it's these college players. I I'm all about bringing in new talent and how having because younger kids, longer careers. People are going to probably want to watch these people grow throughout, but it's still it's the
I mean,
inexperience in these players is baffling.
this is Andrew Wiggins was a can't miss prospect, and he's going into what, his fourth season. What can't miss thing has Andrew Wiggins done in his first 4 years, in his first 3 years?
I To be honest with you, there's not really a can't miss thing that he's done. But if you watch the Timberwolves basketball, he's a phenomenal player in the system. But now you're bringing Jimmy Butler into the mix, which is a whole different situation.
Which
You
is going
have
to
Karl
help him
Anthony
definitely.
Towns, right? But it's still bringing in a player of that caliber into the team is definitely going to have a little bit of ripple effect. Whether it helps him or declines him, that's a different story. But you have to admit, like players like Nerlens Noel, we all know what
Yeah,
he did in college.
he was a
He,
can't miss guy either.
what has he done? You have a bunch of these players, that essentially were can't miss players in college, had high drives, a draft stock, and what last year's first rounder, last year's first pick, last year's second pick, and last year's third pick. I want to say that none of them was even close to being where they needed to be as far as being worthy of a top three pick. If you're a top three pick, you lead your team to bigger and better things.
You're a LeBron James. You're a Kevin Durant. You are a Magic Johnson, a Larry Bird. Which, did you watch that 30 for 30?
I did not.
Oh, you have to watch it. It's absolutely incredible with the Lakers and the Celtics in the '80s. My goodness, it was absolutely incredible. But again, the point is, it's Andrew Wiggins is 22 years old. He's going into his third year in the NBA. He hasn't, again, a can't miss prospect who has done absolutely nothing yet. And when you're a can't miss prospect, you are supposed to be a Kevin Durant. You're supposed to be a LeBron James. You're supposed to be a Steph Curry right when you get into the league, not 3 or 4 years down the line. Now, a guy like Karl Anthony Towns, who has been very good in his first couple years. A guy like Butler's going to help. Ricky Rubio, who's been in the league for 5 or 6 years, they're all going to help him grow now, and you're going to see a big change in Minnesota this season. But again, when you are a can't miss prospect, you have to be carrying the team from day one, not 3 years down the line. And when you're 19 years old, when you're as thin as a twig, you can't do that.
It was funny watching all the LA Lakers fans saying that Brandon Ingram was going to do something like that last year. He wasn't even nominated for Rookie of the Year.
Lakers fans are insane.
Neither was Jaylen Brown. I mean, like I said, he didn't really get enough minutes, but Brandon Ingram was a starter. So when you are drafted at such high stock and you're being outperformed by people who are mid-rounders or, late first round, even into the second round, clearly these are underdeveloped players being thrown into a elite level style of basketball that they are not accustomed to.
It's incredible how unprepared these young kids truly are when they get into the league, and it's only made more noticeable when they get on the floor. It really is. But just really quick, top of the sixth inning, Mets still leading Miami 5-1. Yankees are still in a rain delay. Yesterday, I believe this was a part of the MLS Cup. The Red Bulls defeating the Philadelphia Union 5-3 on penalties. The final for the game was 1-1, but the Red Bulls won 5-3 on penalties. And New York City FC and Minnesota United FC. United FC, really? It's Minnesota United. You don't have to put the FC in there. It's especially when FC stands for football club and you call it soccer in the United States. It makes no sense. That game in the 50th minute right now tied 1-1. Really quick, before we go here, because we're running short on time here. What did you think of this year's NBA playoffs?
As a whole, I knew what the finals were going to be before anyone had said anything. I knew it was going to be Golden State and Cavaliers. I figured it was going to be the trilogy to this final series. But as a whole, it wasn't really competitive. I felt like it should have been more competitive. The only competitive series I can think of that were actually like hard-nosed, talk trash basketball was the Wizards and Celtics series. Mm-hmm. As far as everything else, it was pretty predictable. The only thing I could think of that would come close to maybe that series was the San Antonio and Houston series, because that was decent. Watching Ginobili play his possible final game in the NBA against James Harden.
Then Harden takes an elbow to the head and he's out of it for Game 6.
Right. That was maybe the only other series I could think of. As a whole, as much as I want to say, it's great job to these organizations for building stacked teams in Golden State and in Cleveland, it's really hurting the NBA with these teams that can't compete against anybody else because it's not competitive and it's not fun to watch.
Exactly. I've been calling this year's finals Rocky 3. It's really going to be the last one of interest before, if it happens again, now it's just kind of really this is the same thing the last 3 times. And I don't see it changing unless something happens like LeBron leaves Cleveland this offseason. I don't see that changing. These playoffs were absolutely pitiful, and they needed a good final, and they didn't. The NBA did not get it. What did you think of? Now we're going way back to the beginning of the season. What do you think of Kevin Durant going to Golden State, and do you think it hurt the quality of the NBA?
As far as it hurting the quality of the NBA, I mean, to be fair, Golden State was already a phenomenal team to begin with. Adding Kevin Durant was I
Overkill.
it was essentially overkill. It was pretty much just the icing on top of the very, very, very big cake that was already made. You know, the one that you stare at through the window of a bakery, going, "Mommy, mommy, can I have a piece?"
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
that's pretty much what it was. The only thing that I want to think it hurt, and this made me be biased, it hurt the MVP voting. Now, the reason why is because you had a guy in Russell Westbrook being
Yeah,
the
we
only
didn't touch on that.
was the only guy in Oklahoma City to do anything. They didn't even get a top four seed, and he still won MVP because of, I
Which is
feel
a
like,
joke, because he had,
voters.
yeah, exactly.
He had the second most turnovers in what, like 30 years, 40
Yeah.
years, something like that. And he was a ball hog. He pat stats. He can't even lead his team
He stole rebounds from teammates. That's
to
to get
me
the
it
triple
was
double.
to me, and you may agree with me, you may disagree with me. I don't know your actual standpoint on it. I felt like James Harden was the
Yes.
MVP of the season.
Until he completely bombed out of the San Antonio series. Yes, I do agree. But
What did
it's
Russell do in the playoffs either? I mean, let's be real.
he was out in the first round. But
Exactly.
it's this is what I believe we touched on it yesterday. If not, we got it now. Who won the MVP this year?
Russell by votes, but in my eyes, it was James.
Who who was the most popular player from a media standpoint? Who was the most popular player this year?
Uh, Russell.
Last year, who won the MVP?
Curry.
Who was the most popular player from a media standpoint
Curry.
last year? Who won it the year before that?
Curry.
Most popular player?
I would you call Curry the most popular? I feel like he gained popularity.
No, yes, I would.
Okay, I feel like that was the season where he really.
It's it's a popularity contest. It's like being back in it's like prom voting in high school. It's a popularity contest. You know the star quarterback is going to win prom king and the star cheerleader is going to win prom queen. That's the way high school works. It's the MVP voting is not a popularity contest, and over the last 3 or 4 years, for Steph Curry to win the MVP award unanimously is disgusting. For the most popular player in the league to win the MVP award for the last 5 years is an absolute joke. And this year proved it because Westbrook did not deserve it.
He did it, and like I said, it felt like it was a sympathy vote, and the fact that everybody was writing the fact that the triple doubles. James Harden was a he didn't pad stats. He was I can you name another Houston Rocket that you would trust being on the floor alone other than James Harden?
Um, no.
Exactly. I mean, you could.
You can, but to be fair, you can say the same thing about Russell Westbrook. Do
no,
you
and I'm not
trust
denying that.
another
I
Thunder
said
player?
no, and I said that. I said he was the only Thunder to do anything. But the fact that James Harden by himself led his team to what was it, a second seed or a third seed?
Uh,
One
he
of the two.
left. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's a joke. It really is. It's an embarrassment that Westbrook, who and I got it all season long on my phone. Russell Westbrook, another triple double, his 30th of the year, his 31st, 32nd. Oh look, Harden just got his 20th of the year. This was the year of the triple double, and it's disgusting that it was made about the stat, and the stat was made bigger because I made the point during the season. There is no player on the floor that you look for points, rebounds, and assists from as major categories. If you're a big man, you're looking for points and rebounds. If you're a guard, you're looking for points and assists. You're not looking for all three of those from one player. So the triple double is a ridiculous stat to begin with.
And for me, at least, it's I can understand the standpoint where people are like, wow, he could that's their ability to do that. If you look back, you had players in the past who could get triple double, were walking triple doubles. Rajon Rondo was essentially a walking triple double.
Didn't Julius Erving average a triple double for his career?
I, I I don't know if it was for his career. I think it was just under, but it was very, very close.
And he had one year where he averaged a triple double for a season and finished third in the MVP voting.
Yep. That was the same one that Bill Russell, I believe, won the MVP.
It was Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain were right up there. It's
hmm but it's I want it was the Big O in there, Oscar Robertson, I believe, too.
that might have been who it was. Robertson, not Julius Erving. I'll have to look.
But no, but it's back then at least. The triple double stats didn't really do much. It was what you did for the team and how your team progressed. For someone like Westbrook to get the MVP for, I believe they were a fifth or a sixth seed this year. I'm leaning towards fifth. It's a travesty when you have players who, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, even LeBron James, I feel like deserved it more than Westbrook. You have these three. Then again, LeBron James decided when and when he didn't want to play. But for Westbrook, didn't deserve it at all. When you turn over the ball that much, when you force up 30 shots a game and only shooting barely over 40%, you were not the MVP. You have no 3-point shot unless you just chuck it up 17 times and you get 3 to fall. Woo, whoop-de-doo. You're not gonna
Exactly. It's not when you sit there and go, oh well, Russell made 500 shots this year, which is 100 more than anyone else. You think, wow, that's really good. How many shots did he take though? Oh, he took 1,200 compared to the second place guy who took 7. That's like, really? You're kidding me, right? Who's the better shooter? It's obviously the second guy. And by the way, that was Oscar Robertson. Oscar Robertson in 61-62 averaged a triple double, finished third behind Wilt and Russell. Wilt averaged 50.5 points that season. Good God.
I believe that was the season for the 76ers, right?
Yes, it was.
So that tells you that the difference in MVP voting depended on where your team finished. Now it's like you said, it's a popularity contest.
Jeez,
granted, when Steph Curry won it, they were the top seed in the West both times.
These stats are ridiculous. Russell with 50.5 points per game, 25.7 rebounds per game. Russell, who finished second, 18 points per game with 23.5 rebounds per game. Elgin Baylor, who finished fourth, had 38.5 points per game. Walt Bellamy, who played for Chicago, finished eighth in that year's MVP voting, 31.5 points per game and 19 rebounds per game. And he finished eighth. And then you have Russell Westbrook, who wins because he's popular.
It tells you I'm going to say this now. If Kyle Lowry doesn't sign with the Toronto Raptors, DeMar DeRozan, if he gets popular because he's the only guy in Toronto, if he chucks up 30 shots a game and averages about 11 turnovers a game, he'll win it. You heard it here, folks, ladies and gentlemen. DeMar DeRozan, 2018 MVP.
Well, there you go. The guy who's on here once a year has just made his grand claim for the year, and I'm sure we'll get back to it in December when you come back on.
Hopefully, I'll be on before that. But that's essentially what it is. The league feels sorry that the player on your team leaves, and it's.
I was watching the NHL fantasy, the NHL expansion draft for the new team in Vegas. And I was thinking, good Lord, what an amazing idea for the NBA. Be able to make off limits 2 players, 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 So say for the Celtics, who would you make your two players? Who would your two players be that would be off limits?
As far as who's on the roster now,
Yes.
people might give me crap for this, but I would probably say Bradley and and um, either Crowder or Smart. I'm sorry.
So those are your two guys. For the Knicks, I would be Porzingis and this new kid, the new point guard that they drafted, whose name I'm not gonna hurt myself trying to remember how to pronounce it. And then everyone else in the league gets thrown into a pool, and you just have a fantasy draft. That's it. Just do that. Just do that. Restructure the contracts if you need to make it all work. But what better way to make the NBA competitive again than to just do an expansion draft or do a fantasy draft? It's like that's a no-brainer to me. It's an easy way to fix the problem that the NBA has.
The only problem is that you would have all these angry fans that were happy about their teams being top of the league, in Golden State and Cleveland. They're like, "Oh, remember, we lost all our good players." Well, yeah, that's the point. Make the
Yeah,
team make the game more competitive.
exactly. Boo freakity who. You've been to the finals 3 consecutive years. You'll get there again. Don't worry about it.
It'll only take you another 50 something years, but hey,
Exactly. Just to get to the end of the show today, Mets now leading the Marlins 5-3. An RBI single by Martin Prado, and then a wild pitch by Seth Lugo, scoring Christian Yelich, made it 5-3. That game going into the top of the seventh inning. Yankees are still in a rain delay. Once again, the lineup tonight for the Yankees: Luis Cessa going for the Yankees starting pitcher tonight, James Shields. For Chicago, it'll be Gardner, Judge, Gregorius, Sanchez, Ellsbury, Fowler, Romine, Wade, and Torres. For the Yankees tonight, for the White Sox, Hanson, Cabrera, Abreu, Frazier, Sanchez, Smith, Engel, Navarez, and Garcia, if that game does get underway. Again, yesterday the New York Red Bulls defeating the Philadelphia Union 1-1, but a 5-3 win in penalties. Their next game is Wednesday against the New England Revolution. New York City FC has opened it up against Minnesota FC. Christian Ramirez scoring for Minnesota United FC in... It's so stupid. Minnesota United FC in the 9th minute made it 1-0 Minnesota. Since then, it has been Alexander Callens, Jack Harrison, and David Villa scoring for New York City FC. Harrison and Villa scoring 11 minutes apart. It is 3-1 New York City FC in that match. So, Krusha, it's been fun having you back, and of course, anytime you're available to come on the program, you are more than welcome. Even if it's in the middle of the show, just let me know. We'll take a break and get you in. So thank you so much for coming on today, and hopefully this will become a regular thing again.
Well, thank you for having me on, and I'm hoping that that's the case. I just busy schedules, and I was actually talking to Frankie. He can attend he can have my back in this. I've been trying to get back on for at least a month now, but just my schedule's been so out of whack that it's been hard. And plus, when I was available, he was on vacation.
Yep,
so
that's what really got the talk started again. Is he said the first day we were in New York, he goes, "You want to do the show today?" I'm like, 3,000 miles away from where I'm supposed to be. But
so hopefully I'll be back on more regularly, because I do miss it. I can't wait to be doing this more often with you.
And we sure as hell hope so. Have you heard from Nick recently?
Oh, I have.
So, I mean, if you could try to get him to do a show, I mean, a complete and total 3-man reunion show, because we tried to do that for the 1 year anniversary 6 months ago, almost 7 months ago now. But he was either just starting school again, or he was just finishing the semester, or something.
He just actually at that time his break had just ended before it had to go back to school.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I can. So again, life happens, especially when you're not getting paid for this stuff. Life takes priority. So that will do it for us today. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you all tomorrow.